Out of 45 people who boarded a plane,
40 passengers and 5 crew members, only 16 persons made it alive from the horror.
they were stranded in the freezing cold.
They were forced to commit cannibalism with the corpse of already dead passengers.
Keep watching, as the end of this tragedy would leave you in shock.
On October 12, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 took off from Montevideo, Uruguay. On board were 45 people, 40 passengers and 5 crew members. The plane was chartered by the Old Christians Club, an amateur rugby team,
To transport players, friends, and family to Santiago, Chile,
for an exhibition match.
due to bad weather.
The plane was forced to land in Mendoza, Argentina, where passengers spent the night. On October 13, the flight resumed,
With a course plotted to bypass the heart of the Andes.
flying through a lower mountain pass.
A little over an hour into the flight, the pilot misjudged their location. Air traffic control cleared them to descend, believing they had cleared the mountains.
In reality, the plane was still in the Andes. It struck a mountain.
Losing both wings and its tail,
The fuselage slid down the mountainside.
before coming to rest in a valley at 11,500 feet.
Survivor Roberto Canessa recalls,
I thought, you're dead. You are going to know.
"What is in the last frontier of life?
When the plane lost its wings and tail,
It began to slide at an incredible speed. I thought my feet were going to go through the back of my ears.
when it stopped, I couldn't believe I was alive.
It was absurd." He describes his first moments after the crash. "It was like a nightmare.
I kept thinking, I will wake up.
There's a button I need to push, and this will all be over." But there was no button. The initial crash killed 12 people.
And left a number of the 33 surviving passengers injured. 5 more people died during the first night, and another succumbed to her injuries around a week later,
Leaving 27 still alive.
believing they would be rescued any day.
The survivors endured sub-zero nighttime temperatures by creating a shelter out of the fuselage wreckage and rationing what little food and wine they found in the luggage, which ran out after about a week.
As in the movie shows, the survivors saw several rescue planes flying overhead in the days that followed.
But no one searching for them was able to spot the white plane wreckage in the snow.
Around day 10,
The survivors recovered a small transistor radio from the plane and heard the devastating news that the search had been called off and they were all presumed dead.
I felt that the world was going on its way, and that we were out of the world.
It's a very strange sensation to be alive while you are considered dead. Canessa says of learning about the end of the search.
But it also resettled us in the sense that waiting for rescue was over.
If we didn't get ourselves out, we were all going to die.
As the weeks passed and starvation set in, the survivors were ultimately forced to resort to cannibalism in order to stay alive.
Canessa says,
Society of the Snow's depiction of the group's discussions about whether to eat the bodies of the deceased is an artistic version of how they arrived at the decision. I told them,
"This is my idea, and I'm going to go out there and cut off a piece of a body."
and I respect what other people think.
He says,
I thought that giving the example would be a good way to go, because there was no plan B.
while eating the bodies was a humiliating experience, according to Canessa.
He says he motivated himself to keep going by thinking about reuniting with his mother.
You are eating a dead person, and the person is your friend, and you wonder, should I do this, or should I let myself die? He says,
But I have seen how mothers cry when they lose their sons.
and I didn't want my mother to go through that.
I realized that when you have a reason for doing something, nothing stops you. The movie focuses on what Bayona refers to as the generosity of the act, rather than exploiting it for shock value.
This is a horrible story that is never focused on the horror, he told the BBC. The way we approach the story is quite the opposite. It's focused on the human aspect of the story and on the friendship, on the extreme generosity they had to each other. As the group waited for the snow to begin to melt in the spring thaw, further disaster struck when, on October 29th, 2 back-to-back avalanches buried the fuselage in snow, killing 8 more people and trapping the rest inside for 3 days. Those who survived had to rely on the bodies entombed alongside them for food. We tried to keep our sense of humor, Canessa says of the days they were snowed in by the avalanche. Sense of humor is very important in life. It's important to laugh at your own condition. That makes you keep going. So if you had something nice to say,
You would say it.
and if you had something sad to say,
You would keep it to yourself.
we always work together to try to raise spirits. The 19 remaining survivors eventually managed to tunnel out of the fuselage, only to have to retreat back in for another 3 days when a blizzard descended. When they were finally able to emerge,
They began exploring ways to climb out of the mountains. 3 more deaths occurred over the course of the next month, leaving only 16 still alive.
as temperatures rose, 3 members Canessa, Nando and Vizintin set out on a dangerous trek to reach civilization in Chile.
Canessa felt compelled to lead, saying, "I thought that in this group, I was the person to go." After 3 days, they realized they were deeper in the mountains than expected. Vizintin returned to camp to conserve food, allowing Canessa and Nando to continue.
Nando and I became like one person, Canessa shared.
Every step brought us closer to Chile.
After a grueling 10-day journey, they encountered a man on horseback who was able to alert authorities about the survivors still waiting in the mountains.
Canessa buried the remains they had brought for sustenance, signifying a new chapter.
Rescue helicopters finally arrived on December 22, 1972, but weather conditions limited them to airlifting.
Only 6 of the 14 remaining survivors were rescued that day. The other 8 were rescued the following day. Once safe, Canessa pursued his dream of becoming a doctor.
Ultimately becoming a renowned pediatric cardiologist.
"I had felt like I had an elephant on my shoulders for 72 days.
And when I achieved rescue for my friends, that weight was gone," he said.
I fought to return to medicine."
This harrowing tale of survival illustrates the profound strength of the human spirit and the enduring bonds of friendship.